You are not your circumstances. That statement may sound simple, maybe even cliche, but it's one of the most powerful truths you will ever come to realize. Most people live their entire lives believing that their environment, their upbringing, their mistakes, or even their current bank balance defines them. They wake up in the morning, and the first thing they feel is the weight of what's missing. The bills, the heartbreak, the rejections, the disappointments. They look around and see the same walls, the same problems, and they silently conclude, this is who I am. This is my life. But that's not the truth. That's just a snapshot, a moment in time. It's not your identity. It's not your destiny. It's simply a reflection of your past thoughts, your past decisions, and most importantly, your past beliefs. The problem isn't what's going on around you. The real problem is what you've been led to believe about yourself in the middle of what's going on around you. When you internalize negative experiences and attach your worth to them, you unconsciously limit your potential. The danger here is that most people don't even realize they're doing it. They carry around emotional wounds like invisible badges. Rejections become labels. Failures become definitions. Delays become evidence that they're unworthy. And they build their identity not around who they could become, but around what they've been through. Let's make something clear. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. That means your current situation is not a life sentence. It's a report card of your inner state. It's a mirror. If you feel unworthy, you'll attract circumstances that validate that feeling. If you feel overlooked, you'll draw on experiences where you're ignored. And if you feel powerless, you'll continue to see the same cycle of struggle and defeat. But here's the powerful part. Once you shift how you see yourself, everything else starts to respond differently. Life doesn't change first. You change first. And then life moves in response to that change. There is an unseen energy operating through every moment of your life. Call it faith, call it vibration, call it consciousness. Whatever language you want to use, it doesn't change the fact that your thoughts and emotions are constantly broadcasting who you believe you are. The universe, God, whatever divine source you acknowledge, isn't reacting to your words. It's responding to your frequency. That means you can speak positive affirmations all day long. But if deep down you still feel unworthy, still feel small, still feel like the world is against you, then nothing outside of you will truly shift. You must change the signal you're sending. You must learn to look at your circumstances without letting them define you. Think about this: a seed planted and dry. Cracked soil doesn't scream, "This is my forever." It knows that what it is today, buried, unseen, struggling, is not a verdict. It's a process. It's becoming. And so are you. But unlike that seed, you have the ability to decide to break through. You don't have to wait for perfect conditions. You don't have to wait for someone to come save you. You can begin right now by choosing to separate your identity from your situation. You can say, yes, I may be broke right now, but I am not broken. Yes, I may feel stuck, but I am not defined by this stuckness. Yes, life may have hit me hard, but I am not a victim of it. Your current emotional state is not your permanent identity, but it becomes permanent if you continue to accept it as normal. That's the silent trap most people fall into. They normalize dysfunction. They normalize fear. They normalize disappointment. And then they begin to expect it. They wake up and brace for the worst. They live from a place of survival instead of creation. And that's where transformation dies. Not because they're not worthy of better, but because they stopped expecting better. They accepted the label that life gave them instead of realizing they could rewrite it. You see, the minute you begin to observe your thoughts and challenge them, not blindly believe them, you begin the journey of personal freedom. When a thought comes up that says, you'll never make it, instead of embracing it as truth, ask yourself, where did this come from? Who gave me this belief? Is it mine? Or was it passed down from someone who gave up on their own dreams? That level of self-awareness is the key to shifting everything. Because once you stop identifying with the struggle loses its grip. This isn't about denying reality. It's about declaring authority over it. You are not a passive participant in life. You are a co-creator. And when you understand that your internal environment, your beliefs, your thoughts, your emotional patterns have the power to reshape your external world, you start to walk differently. You begin to speak with conviction. You carry yourself with expectancy. And even if the circumstances haven't changed yet, your posture has. And that posture sends a signal, not only to life, but to every person and opportunity connected to your next level. No is a word that can stop people in their tracks. For many, it's more than just a rejection. It's a judgment. It becomes personal. When someone hears no, they don't just hear denial. They hear, you're not good enough, you're not ready, or even worse, you'll never be. And over time, if they hear it enough, they start to internalize it. They start to shrink back. They stop asking. They stop trying. They let the sting of that one syllable control the direction of their life. But here's the truth most people never realize. No is not a period. It's a comma. It's not the end of your story. It's a redirection within it. Every single person who has ever done anything of significance has heard no at some point. The difference between those who rise and those who retreat lies in how they interpret the word. You see, no is not a rejection of your worth. It's a recalibration of your path. Sometimes the door you're banging on so hard isn't locked because you're not worthy. It's locked because what's behind it can't hold who you're becoming. There's a bigger room being prepared for you, but you're still trying to fit into a space designed for a smaller version of yourself. The power of no is in its ability to reveal. It reveals our attachments. It reveals our expectations. It reveals where we've been placing our identity. Some people take a no from a job, a person, or a goal, and they collapse internally because their sense of value was tied to getting that eyes. But the universe has a way of protecting your purpose with a no that you don't understand until later. That job you didn't get, that relationship that didn't work, that opportunity that fell through, it didn't happen to you. It happened for you. The door was closed not because you're unworthy, but because that path couldn't take you where you're truly meant to go. But we're trained to chase acceptance. From the time we're children, we're rewarded when we conform, when we follow, when we seek approval. So when someone tells us no, especially in moments where we've risked vulnerability, we retreat into shame. We assume that the rejection is personal. We don't just question the opportunity, we question ourselves. We start to wonder, am I too much? Am I not enough? And without realizing it, we begin to downgrade our dreams to avoid the discomfort of disappointment. But the truth is, no is never the problem. The problem is the meaning you attach to it. If you begin to see every no as guidance instead of punishment, everything begins to shift. That means when life says no, you don't collapse, you course correct. You say, okay, this path isn't it, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. You keep moving. You stay open. You trust that even when things don't go the way you plan, they can still unfold in a way that's better than you imagined. That is not blind faith. That is spiritual intelligence. That is emotional maturity. That is inner authority. Think about how many people gave up on their destiny because they were told no by someone who didn't see their vision. Maybe a teacher said, "You're not smart enough." Maybe a parent said, be realistic. Maybe a friend laughed when they shared their dream. Those words carry weight, but only if you accept them as true. And unfortunately, many do. They adopt someone else's opinion as their truth. They wear it like a garment and carry it through life. And then they wonder why they feel small, why they feel lost, why they keep circling the same patterns. It's because they're navigating life using a map someone else drew based on fear and limitation. But you have the power to tear up that map. You can choose to take the no and use it as fuel instead of evidence. You can let it drive you deeper into your purpose, not away from it. Because the very people who told you no today may be the same ones trying to get your attention when your breakthrough comes. That's how life works. But none of that can happen if you let the temporary sound of a no become a permanent block to your potential. There's also another layer. Sometimes the no doesn't come from other people. It comes from within. You tell yourself, no, I can't do that. No, I'm not ready. No, I'm not capable. And those internal no's can be louder and more destructive than anything the outside world could ever say. You become your own gatekeeper. You shut down your ideas before they've had a chance to breathe. You suppress your calling because you're afraid to fail. But what if you stopped arguing for your limitations? What if you stopped rehearsing the reasons why it won't work and started declaring the reasons why it must? Changing your relationship with the word no is not about becoming reckless or arrogant. It's about becoming aware of your power. It's about realizing that no external voice can dictate the internal decision you've already made. When you've truly decided who you are, no amount of rejection can unmake that. You might be delayed, but you're never denied. Not unless you say so. That's the real truth. Life bends to those who refuse to bow to fear. And no, that simple, short, one-syllable word only has the power you give it. Emotions are not just feelings you experience privately. They are forces that radiate through every area of your life. Every thought you think and every feeling you allow yourself to dwell on is shaping your reality in real time. What most people don't understand is that emotional energy is not passive. It's creative. It builds patterns. It either magnetizes breakthroughs or multiplies breakdowns. If you sit long enough in frustration, resentment, fear, or guilt, those emotions become filters. They start coloring how you see the world, how you interpret situations, how you respond to people, and even how you speak to yourself. You don't just feel negative. You begin to live negative. Your emotional state is the blueprint for your reality. That's not spiritual poetry. That's energy. Everything you want, whether it's financial abundance, love, peace, or purpose, has a frequency. And if you're operating on the opposite frequency, it won't matter how many books you read, how hard you work, or how many motivational speeches you listen to. You can't pull in joy while radiating bitterness. You can't create clarity from a mind clouded by doubt. You can't manifest confidence while constantly feeding the emotion of insecurity. Emotional alignment is not a luxury. It's the secret ingredient to change. People often say, nothing in my life is changing. But they never ask, what am I emotionally practicing every day? If you start your morning with dread, complain about your life throughout the day, and go to bed in anxiety, then those emotions are creating more of themselves. That's the feedback loop. Energy doesn't lie, and it doesn't sleep. It responds to your dominant vibration. Your thoughts set the direction, but your emotions lock it in. If you keep watering the seed of worry, don't be surprised when you harvest more problems. If you nurture fear, life will find a way to reflect it back to you. Now, does that mean you should fake happiness or force positivity? Absolutely not. That's a mistake a lot of people make. They suppress real emotions thinking that's what alignment looks like. But energy doesn't respond to masks. It responds to truth. If you're angry, don't bury it under a fake smile. Feel it. Acknowledge it. Let it surface without judgment. But don't stay there. Emotions are signals, not stop signs. They're meant to pass you, not take up residence. The issue is that most people don't just feel emotions. They move into them and build a house. They replay the betrayal. They rehearse the trauma. They relive the shame. And each time they do, they're reinforcing the emotional charge that shapes the world around them. To change your life, you must become emotionally responsible. That doesn't mean being emotionally numb. It means become the observer. Step outside your own emotional patterns and ask, what is this emotion trying to teach me? Is this helping me expand, or is it pulling me backward? That level of self-inquiry is where real growth begins. When you're aware, you can interrupt the pattern. You can shift. You can choose again. You don't have to keep repeating the emotional story that was handed to you. Think of your emotions like the climate of your internal world. If your emotional weather is constantly stormy, full of jealousy, comparison, blame, then it will be hard for anything to grow there. Even if opportunities come your way, you won't be able to see them clearly. You'll sabotage them. You'll misinterpret them. You'll push them away unconsciously. But when your inner climate is calm, when it's nourished with gratitude, hope, confidence, and peace, you become fertile ground for transformation. Things begin to align. Doors open. Connections flow. Why? Because you've raised your emotional vibration to match the reality you've been asking for. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. That's the emotional law people forget. You can want success, but if you constantly feel defeated, you'll miss the ideas, the people, and the moments that could lead to your breakthrough. You can want love, but if you're radiating unworthiness, you'll either attract people who confirm that, or you'll push away the ones who don't. That's not punishment. It's energetic precision. Life meets you where you emotionally stand. This is why emotional discipline is everything. Not control, not repression, discipline. The ability to feel deeply but choose wisely. To understand that you can feel afraid without becoming fear. That you can be sad without building an identity around it. That you can honor your past without dragging its pain into your future. You start learning to use emotions as tools, not as dictators. And when you do that, you stop reacting to life and start co-creating it. But this takes practice. Emotional awareness is a skill, not a switch. You develop it by paying attention to your internal responses, by refusing to accept every emotion as truth, and by building new habits that support higher energy. That might mean waking up and choosing gratitude even when nothing seems perfect. That might mean walking away from people who keep triggering your worst feelings. That might mean sitting in silence and breathing until the emotional noise quiets down enough for you to hear your own wisdom. Whatever the path, the goal is the same: to shift the emotional current you're living in. Because once your emotions align with your vision, you start becoming a magnet for the very things you once thought were impossible. Not because luck finds you, but because energy recognizes energy. And when your inner world starts matching the frequency of the life you desire, everything around you begins to move in rhythm with that signal. Destiny is not given, it's chosen. That may challenge everything you've been told. From a young age, many people are to believe that their future is something pre-written, assigned, or handed to them by circumstances, fate, or some distant external force. But that kind of belief strips you of power. It puts your life on autopilot. It teaches you to wait instead of create. You start living like a passenger in your own journey, quietly hoping that something or someone will pull you into your purpose. But destiny doesn't work like that. It isn't something you stumble upon one day by accident. It's something you decide to step into. Every single day, you are making decisions that either move you toward your destiny or pull you further from it. The problem is, most people are making those decisions unconsciously. They're choosing out of fear. They're choosing out of habit. They're choosing based on what's familiar, not what's right. And they think that because they didn't deliberately choose failure or lack, that they didn't choose at all. But indecision is a decision. Silence is a decision. Avoidance is a decision. Every time you refuse to confront what's holding you back, you're choosing to stay where you are. People wait on destiny like it's a delivery. They say, if it's meant to be, it'll be. But that mindset hands over all your authority to chance. It assumes that you're here to observe life, not command it. And when things don't go your way, you say, it just wasn't meant for me. Instead of asking, what could I have chosen differently? The truth is, you're not here to wait for meaning. You're here to make meaning. That's what separates people who change their lives from people who talk about change. The former don't ask for permission. They recognize that destiny is not a gift. It's a responsibility. Your destiny doesn't begin when something magical happens. It begins the moment you say, I will no longer live beneath who I was created to be. That's the real turning point. It doesn't require fanfare. It doesn't even require perfect conditions. What it requires is decision. Deep, grounded, unwavering decision. Not a wish, not a vague hope. A decision backed by action, belief, and commitment. That's when the shift happens. That's when life begins to conspire with your courage. So many people delay their destiny because they're waiting for confidence before they move. But confidence doesn't come before the decision. It comes after it. You don't become confident and then take the leap. You leap and confidence meets you midair. That's how growth works. If you only act when you feel ready, you'll never act. Because readiness doesn't come from the outside. It's generated by motion. Every time you choose faith over fear, you're voting for your destiny. Every time you show up when it's uncomfortable, you're reinforcing the reality you want to create. It's important to understand that your current situation is not proof of your destiny. It's proof of your past alignment. That means where you are now is not a verdict, it's a mirror. If you want the reflection to change, you have to change what you're bringing to the mirror. Your destiny is not hiding from you. It's waiting on you to align with it. That alignment begins in thought, continues through belief, and becomes real through action. You have to believe that your life can be different. Not because someone told you it could be, but because you've decided that it must be. And yes, that decision will be tested. You'll face resistance. You'll be tempted to fall back into old patterns. You'll question yourself. That's part of it. Growth comes with pressure. But pressure is a sign that you're stretching. It means you're expanding beyond what you've known. And that's exactly what destiny demands. You cannot step into a new future while holding on to an old identity. You have to let go of who you've been so you can become who you're meant to be. This requires a deep level of honesty. You have to ask yourself, where have I been playing small? Where have I been blaming life instead of choosing differently? What would change if I truly believed I had the power to shape my outcome? These questions aren't easy, but they are necessary because you can't unlock destiny with surface level clarity. You need depth. You need conviction. You need to be willing to walk away from the story that says you're stuck, you're late, or you're disqualified. None of those things are true unless you keep choosing them. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. What you need is a decision that's louder than your doubts. A decision that doesn't check in with your feelings every 5 minutes. A decision that remains steady even when your environment doesn't yet reflect the result. Because it's not about what you see. It's about what you know. You know you were made for more. You know the voice inside you that keeps pushing for better isn't just imagination. It's instruction. And you know that settling will never satisfy you because you were never meant to settle. You were meant to rise. You were meant to lead. You were meant to build something that lasts. But none of that happens until you decide fully and completely to choose your destiny instead of waiting for it to choose you. There is a hidden power in your mind that most people never fully tap into because they are too busy reacting to what they can see. They're staring at their bank accounts, their relationships, their environment, and using those external realities as the evidence for what's possible. But that's not how transformation works. The world you see is a reflection of what you've been thinking, believing, and expecting, whether consciously or unconsciously. Until you learn to shift your inner state first, the outer circumstances will remain stubbornly unchanged. Your mind is the soil, and your thoughts are the seeds. You cannot plant thoughts of doubt, fear, and failure and expect a harvest of abundance, clarity, and joy. Most people are trapped in mental autopilot. They think the same 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts every single day, and over 90% of those are recycled from the day before. That means if you don't intentionally interrupt your thinking, you're reliving the same patterns under a different disguise. You might change jobs, change relationships, change cities. But if the mental programming stays the same, the results will eventually look familiar. Because the real shift has to start inside your thinking. You don't think your way into change. You believe your way into it. That's where your thoughts turn into conviction. That's when the brain rewires, the emotion locks in, and your energy begins to carry a different signature. Visualization isn't some fluffy technique you do when you're bored or when you're desperate. It's a discipline. It's the act of choosing your reality before the evidence shows up. You sit down, close your eyes, and you see it. You feel it. You live it in your mind first, because that's the only place where no one can tell you it's impossible. The subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's vividly imagined and what's real. That's why elite athletes visualize their victories before they ever step on the court. That's why entrepreneurs who build billion-dollar empires often saw it in their imagination long before they had anything physical to show for it. Because when your mind rehearses a reality long enough, your body, your emotions, and your decisions start to align with it, even when the world hasn't caught up yet. But most people don't give themselves permission to imagine boldly. They're so used to limiting their thought that they never break free from their current emotional ceiling. They say things like, I don't want to get my hopes up, as if hope is dangerous. What they don't realize is that hope is a creative force. It's the first signal that your spirit remembers a version of your life that's bigger than the one you're currently living. But hope has to be nurtured. It has to be fed with images, affirmations, and repetition. You have to make your vision more familiar than your limitations. The more you immerse your mind in the life you want, the less power your fears will hold over you. And here's where it gets even more real. Your imagination is not just a mental playground. It's a spiritual instruction manual. Every time you visualize the highest version of yourself, you're giving your subconscious mind a new assignment. You're saying, this is who I am. This is what I expect. This is what I'm available for. And your brain, like the most loyal assistant, goes to work behind the scenes to filter your reality through that lens. That's why you start noticing new ideas, attracting new people, spotting new paths, because your awareness has shifted. You're no longer tuned into survival mode. You're tuned into creation. But none of this happens if you treat your mental power casually. You must be intentional with your thoughts the same way a sculptor is intentional with every strike of the chisel. It's not about fake positivity or ignoring reality. It's about reprogramming your response to it. When something goes wrong, your old self might react with panic, blame, or hopelessness. But your new self, trained through visualization and mental discipline, responds with clarity. You say, this is temporary. I know where I'm going. I've already seen it. That's the strength of a renewed mind. It doesn't collapse under pressure because it has already rehearsed victory. You also need to be mindful of the thoughts you allow to settle. It's not the random negative thought that causes damage. It's the one you nurse, entertain, and give a seat at your table. You become what you consistently meditate on. If you meditate on lack, you begin to act out of scarcity. If you meditate on betrayal, you become guarded and closed off. But if you meditate on peace, abundance, healing, restoration, and growth, those thoughts will eventually shape your speech, influence your habits, and direct your destiny. The mind, once stretched by a new vision, will never return to its original dimensions. But that stretching doesn't happen by accident. It happens through repetition, through focused imagination, through deliberate emotional engagement. The most powerful transformation occurs when you stop using your imagination to replay your pain and start using it to preview your promise. When you stop visualizing everything that could go wrong and start visualizing everything that could go right. That doesn't mean challenges disappear. It means you're no longer approaching life as a victim of circumstance, but as a conscious creator of possibility. That's when the mental image becomes magnetic. That's when the invisible starts shaping the visible. And the moment your inner world is more real to you than what you see with your eyes, you've crossed a threshold that few ever do. Because now you're no longer living from memory, you're living from vision. Your environment is not just the physical space you occupy. It's the energetic atmosphere you live in. And whether you realize it or not, that atmosphere is constantly shaping your thoughts, influencing your beliefs, and guiding your decisions. Every voice you listen to, every conversation you engage in, every piece of content you consume, and every room you walk into is either fueling your growth or feeding your stagnation. The truth is, you are either being pulled higher by your environment or being quietly suffocated by it. There is no neutral ground. Energy is always moving, always persuading, always working. If you want change in your life, you cannot ignore the influence of what surrounds you. Many people underestimate the subtle power of their surroundings. They spend hours a day around people who talk small, think small, dream small, and they wonder why they can't seem to break out of the cycles they hate. Energy is contagious. And when you surround yourself with people who normalize fear, negativity, gossip, and limitation, that energy becomes your default. Not because you chose it deliberately, but because you absorbed it passively. You start adjusting your tone, your goals, even your posture to fit the room you're in. You tone yourself down to avoid making others uncomfortable. You hide your ideas to avoid being misunderstood. You shrink in places where you should be expanding. And over time, you become a stranger to your own potential. That's why you must protect your space like your future depends on it. Because it does. Every dream you've ever had, every calling that whispers inside you, every desire that won't go away, no matter how much life tries to distract you. Those things are sacred. And they need the right environment to grow. Just like a seed won't grow in dry, toxic soil, your vision can't thrive in an atmosphere of fear, scarcity, or doubt. You cannot keep expecting elevation in a space that is wired for your suppression. The conversations you entertain, the people you trust, the energy you allow near you, these are not casual things. They are sacred contracts with your destiny. And it's not just about people. It's about habits, routines, and systems. If your daily rhythm is designed to keep you busy but not effective, you'll mistake activity for progress. You'll run in circles and wonder why nothing changes. Your environment includes what you see when you wake up in the morning. It includes the voices you let in before you go to sleep. It includes the energy of your home, your workspace, your digital life. All of it is either supporting your growth or slowing it down. That's why intentional design is not a luxury. It's a requirement for breakthrough. Think about this: a plant doesn't grow because it wants to. It grows because the conditions are right. You can have the best seed in the world, but if it's planted in concrete, it won't take root. The same is true for you. Your potential is already there. Your gifts are already coded into your being. But if you keep planting yourself in emotionally bankrupt environments, in cycles of distraction and noise, you'll suppress the very thing you're trying to activate. Sometimes your breakthrough doesn't require a miracle. It requires a move out of spaces that drain you, a move away from people who deplete you, a move out of routines that keep you stuck in survival when you were meant for strategy. And yes, creating a new environment often requires discomfort. It might mean walking alone for a season. It might mean saying no to invitations that don't align with your vision. It might mean spending time in solitude and silence, in reflection, because you're building something real. You're detoxing your atmosphere from the energy that's been sabotaging your next level. It's not easy, but it's necessary. You can't build a palace with the materials from a prison. You need new ingredients, new influences, new standards. That's why you have to become your own environment first. Even before everything around you changes, you can begin to shift what's happening within you. You can create a mental atmosphere of expectancy. You can build a spiritual climate of clarity. You can raise the emotional temperature to match the life you want to live. That's how the outer world begins to bend. Not by force, but by frequency. You carry that frequency into every room. And eventually, the rooms that no longer match it will feel too tight, too dim, too outdated. That's your signal that growth has outpaced your current surroundings, and it's time to upgrade. But you have to be honest about what environments are costing you. If a space leaves you drained, anxious, small, or out of alignment, it is too expensive, no matter how familiar it feels. Comfort is not the measure of a good environment. Alignment is. You need to be in spaces that challenge your thinking, expand your beliefs, elevate your standards. Spaces where your future feels possible, not laughable. Spaces where the conversation forces you to level up, not dumb down. Because those environments do more than inspire, they rewire your normal. When you surround yourself with people and places that mirror the energy of your future, something powerful happens. Your nervous system begins to adapt to the vibration of where you're going. You stop reacting like a visitor in your own dream. You stop shrinking to accommodate what's around you. You begin to normalize the frequency of expansion. And that shift is what pulls new results into your reality. Not just because you worked harder, but because you aligned deeper. You started making choices that match your next level, not your current comfort. That's how environment shapes destiny, not with noise, but with alignment, clarity, and consistent elevated energy.